What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm back in another video. This time once again, we're going to be looking at the old school NBA versus the new school NBA. And these debates, they get very heated, as many fans they claim one era, whether that be the 80s, the 90s, the 2010s, or even the 2020s. And regardless of which era you rep, there's always one constant in these debates from the younger side of NBA fans. And that is the overall belief that today's players, they're bigger, faster, stronger, and therefore they are better than players in past generations. And the underlying thought is that those players in the past, like Jordan, Wilt, Kareem, Russell, all those big-time legends, they wouldn't be as good in this era as they were in their own era. And essentially basketball for the 21st century is archaic, old, and in effect, outdated. And from a basketball debate standpoint, I think that argument is one of the worst arguments you can make in favor of the modern day players, as it's extremely flawed, lacks tons of context, and paints an entire generation with a broad brush. So in this video, very quickly, I'm going to expose the Plumber argument as well as the evolution argument by NBA fans in the modern era. So the first thing I want to talk about in this video is acquired knowledge, and the overall skill set that is passed down from generation to generation. And basketball right now has been around for 75 years exactly. Going back to its inception, you had Bob Cousy doing behind-the-back dribbles, you had Pistol Pete going between the legs, you had Steve Coulter doing the crooked cross, you had Tim Hardaway doing the killer cross, you had Iverson doing the wide cross, and now in today's NBA you have Kyrie, who can virtually do anything with the basketball. And looking at all those names, which player has the biggest benefit of acquired knowledge? It is easily Kyrie Irving and every player in the modern NBA. And why that is those players have 75 years of knowledge and skills to fall back on. And when we talk about the evolution argument, they always ignore this fact. Someone like Bob Cousy or Pistol Pete, for ball handling standards, was super influential for their time. In the 1970s, the rules were much stricter and they couldn't do as much of the ball. Now look at Pistol Pete. Even his highlights in the 70s are still fantastic and all-inspiring today. But if you want to make a pure evolution argument, you could flat out say Pistol Pete for today's standards has average NBA handles. But once again, for his era in the 1970s, what he had to go off of was virtually scratch. He was basically looking at Bob Cousy and using that as his blueprint, compared to someone like Kyrie, who once again had 75 plus years of basketball to look back on. And the innovators of basketball, they don't get enough credit for what they did in their time period. And what I want to do to nail this point home is we had a quick video clip from Kobe Bryant back in 2010 talking about the acquired knowledge he had from past NBA legends like Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Michael Jordan, as well as Elgin Baylor.
I see a lot of similarities in players. And, there isn't a move that's a new move. There's nothing that hasn't been done before. I seriously have stolen all of these moves from these great players. That I started seeing a lot of similarities in terms of physique and things like that, things that I could learn from him at that size and how he worked. I've literally learned so much from him. I just try to, do him proud and do Jerry proud and Oscar Robertson proud and guys came before me because I learned so much from them. So that's exactly how I look at it. When I train and when I work out or when I prepare, it's all in the name of the game. It's a lot bigger than me.
And my biggest takeaway from that video is that Kobe said there was no new moves in basketball. All the moves had already been done by the old NBA legends like Oscar Robertson, Elgin Baylor, Jordan, as well as Jerry West. Those guys were the pioneers, and his era was only building off those eras. So in effect, take someone like Oscar Robertson or Jerry West, put them in today's NBA, and visually, they'd be much better players with the acquired knowledge of past eras in the 80s, 90s, as well as 2000s. And going off acquired knowledge and the benefits of the modern day players back in the 70s like Wilt Chamberlain, they had a lot of disadvantages in their time. If you simply look at the arena they played in, they had dusty floors, people would smoke in the arenas, they were playing with flat bottom shoes, the rims were tighter, and the basketball had way less grip, and their overall training facilities were virtually non-existent. I mean, Wilt back in the day, he didn't have some hydrobaric chamber they could come out of and average 70 a game. He was playing 40 minutes a night, playing back-to-back games with very minimal recovery as well as training. And looking at Wilt Chamberlain, obviously, he was a freak of nature. He was 7'1", extremely strong, he could jump, he was fast. He was a marvelous athlete regardless of era. And to describe the average NBA player and how much better they'd be physically in today's league, the overall advantages, I want you to watch this TED Talk in 2014 from a guy named David Epstein. And in this TED Talk, he compares two sprinters, one from the 1930s and one from the 2010s. And his overall conclusion is pretty astounding on how close these athletes are when it comes to physical gifts and overall ability.
Bang! The gun goes off. An American sprinter jumps out to the front. Usain Bolt starts to catch him. Usain Bolt passes him, and as the runners come to the finish, you'll hear a beep as each man crosses the line. That's the entire finish of the race. You can open your eyes now. That first beep was Usain Bolt. That last beep was Jesse Owens. Listen to it again. When you think of it like that, it's not that big a difference, is it? And then consider that Usain Bolt started by propelling himself out of blocks, down a specially fabricated carpet, designed to allow him to travel as fast as humanly possible. Jesse Owens, on the other hand, ran on cinders, the ash from burnt wood, and that soft surface stole far more energy from his legs as he ran. Rather than blocks, Jesse Owens had a gardening trowel that he had to use to dig holes in the cinders to start from. Biomechanical analysis of the speed of Owens' joints shows that had he been running on the same surface as Bolt, he wouldn't have been 14 feet behind. He would have been within one stride. Rather than the last beep, Owens would have been the second beep. Listen to it again. That's the difference track surface technology has made, and it's done it throughout the running world.
And also the evolution argument, modern day fans argue players today are bigger as well as stronger. But when you look at the overall data, it says something different, as the average height of a player today is 6'6". That is the smallest of the past 41 years. Point guards' average size are 6'2", that is the tallest ever, but shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards as well as centers are smaller than they've ever been. And the same thing goes for your weight. Point guards, they're bigger than ever, but shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards as well as centers, they're as light as they've ever been. But let's keep in mind, we're talking about basketball. This is not the strongest man competition or a 40-yard dash. Basketball at the end of the day is a skill-based sport, as the best athlete is not always the better player. I mean, look at Karl Malone. He was absolutely jacked, a physical force of nature. Was he ever the best player in the NBA in the 1990s? No, he was not. And you could make a very strong case a prime Charles Barkley, who was mostly out of shape, was better than Karl Malone, was a physical force of nature, which once again shows basketball is a skill-based game and not all about physical ability. Now, getting on to our next topic, exposing the Plumber argument as well as the evolution argument, let's look at some players who transcended eras and therefore debunk the evolution argument. The first player I want to look at is Michael Jordan. And Jordan's first year in the NBA was 1984, where he averaged 28.2 points per game. Now 14 years later, in 98, he once again averaged 28 a game. So in that 14-year period at any point, did evolution catch up to Jordan? No, it did not, because humans, they adapt to their surroundings, and Jordan in the late 90s definitely had better training than he had in the early 80s, but by default, did that make him a better player than a young Jordan? No, not necessarily. And evolution for that time definitely didn't catch up to MJ. Even in 2002 with the Wizards before his injury, he was averaging 24.6 points per game, and that was while playing in the 21st century. Now, a lot of the modern day fans who use the evolution or Plumber argument, they do focus on Jordan as well as LeBron James. But the funny thing is, they, like both these players, played in two different galaxies, when in reality, they were separated by less than 8 months of playing time. And LeBron James, a young player, in 2005, averaged 27 points per game. That was in the mid-2000s. Fast forward 17 years later, and LeBron still was dominating, averaging 25 points per game. So why at any point during that time period did evolution not catch LeBron James? That's because the evolution argument at its core is simply flawed, as players like Jordan and LeBron, as well as other NBA legends, they completely debunk this argument by being great in multiple eras. Jordan was great in the 80s, the 90s, and still very good in the 2000s. LeBron also was dominant in 3 different eras, the 2000s, the 2010s, and now the 2020s. I mean, look at someone like Tim Duncan. In his first ever year, he was second team all defense at age 21. That was in 1998. In 2015, at age 38, he was also second team all defense. So during that time period, did evolution at any point catch up to Tim Duncan? Absolutely not. I mean, look at John Stockton. he was a perennial all-star in the 80s as well as the 90s. And at age 37, in the year 2000, he averaged 12 points per game with 9 assists. And even at age 40 in 2003, he still averaged 11 points and 8 assists. So Stockton, once again, was great in the 80s, the 90s, as well as the 2000s. A guy who played 15 plus years and dominated 3 different eras. I mean, there are countless players who can do this for, guys like Shaq, Chris Webber, Karl Malone, and really any player who had great longevity. Now, my last point in this video has to do with a smaller subject, and that is calling people plumbers, politicians, milkmen, engineers, mechanics, and just all types of nonsense. Once again, fans in the modern era completely disrespect past legends like Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, even Shaq, Clyde Drexler, as well as David Robinson. Calling those guys plumbers is completely out of bounds. Anyone who knows basketball knows those guys were all-time great players, regardless of eras. I mean, look at some of these comparisons. You have Karl Malone, who's absolutely jacked, compared to Luka Doncic, who's an average NBA athlete. You have KD, who's pretty skinny, compared to David Robinson, who's an absolute Adonis. You have Nikola Jokic, the MVP, who's a little bit chubby, compared to Shaq, who's absolutely jacked. I mean, you can cherry pick all day, compare players who are strong to players who are skinny and less athletic. And at the core of it, it's a cherry picked argument that is super disingenuous. So in conclusion for this video, different NBA eras, they're all great in their own unique way. And players from the past, they aren't worse than players in today's NBA, simply because of technology. And I think for most NBA fans, the Plumber argument, as well as the evolution argument, they know it's flawed, but how do you respond to that argument and debunk it? In this video, I hope I gave you a lot of ammo and a lot of points to combat those NBA fans who say the 80s or the 90s will be nothing compared to the modern NBA. So that being said, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.